Okay, hola. My name is Jordan Casey. Thanks for coming. In my presentation today, I'm pretty much going to tell you a little bit about me, my story, and what it's like to be a young entrepreneur. So before I get into what this presentation is all about, I'll give you a quick introduction about myself. So who am I? I'm 17 years old. I'm from Waterford in Ireland, which is a really small town in the south of the country. We're not really known for technology or startups, but what we're most famous for is, okay, hang on, this, which is called the blah. So it's like a delicacy, like bread, but not really related to technology. But that's what my town is known for. I'm an entrepreneur, so over the past couple of years, I've been really lucky that I've been able to start a number of different companies ranging in technology and gaming. I'm a speaker as well, so like today, I get to travel a lot, share my story, and promote young entrepreneurship. And I'm a kid for now, so there's a little bit of time left to call myself that. But before I get into anything, I'll tell you my story. A really important quote to keep in mind for this is that you're never too young to change the world. And that quote has stuck with me, and I think it's a really, really inspiring quote. But anyway, my story. So everything started for me a couple of years ago, about 8 years ago, when I was 9 years old. I used to play this game on the internet called Club Penguin, for any of you who ever heard that. And basically what that was, where it's a game where you play as like a penguin and you talk to other penguins, pretty much kids around the world. And what some of the people who played Club Penguin were doing was they were creating their own websites and blogs about the game. So me being an interested, curious kid, I decided to learn how to make these games and these blogs and these websites. So I started reading websites, I started watching videos on YouTube, I started reading books and whatever I could pretty much get my hands on, and I learned how to taught myself how to program or write code. And the coding aspect that's where that came from. But my entrepreneurship aspect started a long time before that. I remember when I was a little kid, I always had this sort of entrepreneurial mindset. So whether that was me selling like karate lessons to like my neighbors when I knew nothing about karate, to me selling my brother's old toys without his knowledge, and just acting like a businessman. I always sort of had this entrepreneurial mindset. I think I was sort of born with it. And then when I found coding, I kind of found my niche through that, and I used my entrepreneurial mindset to create businesses around my coding. It all really came to the forefront in 2012 when I started the discovery of the iPhone and the iPhone development kit. So basically, this would allow me to sell games and sell apps on the App Store and make a business out of what I was doing. The only problem with acquiring the development kit and making apps for the App Store is that you need an Apple Mac. And for those of you who don't know, Apple Macs are really expensive, especially for a young kid like myself. I was 12 years old at the time. And basically, the only sort of option I had was to go to my parents and ask them for money to buy an Apple Mac. So that's the first thing I did, and initially I was shut down. No way they were getting me a Mac. They didn't know what I was doing, really. My parents don't really come from a technological background, so they thought I wanted to play games on this Mac rather than make my own games. So after convincing, and like days of convincing and still being told no, I came to the final conclusion. And what I did was I forged a letter pretending to be an executive from Apple, explaining to my parents why I should buy an Apple Mac for me. So a little bit illegal, but I'll let it slide. But yeah, so that was the last resort. Funnily enough, my parents believed it, bought me the Mac, and everything sort of started from there. Yeah, but that's pretty much how I got to where I am today. Over the years, then I started publishing different games. One was called Alien Ball vs. Humans, which I'll speak about in a minute. I also worked on an education system called Teachware, which basically provided teachers with a space where they could like store all the information in the cloud. And at the moment, I'm working on two projects called Creativity and the Teenage Entrepreneur Movement, which I'll talk about in a second. But yeah, that's how it all started, pretty much, forging letters for Apple. Yeah, so quickly now, I'll just run you through a couple of my projects. So as I mentioned there, my first game was called Alien Ball versus Humans. Pretty much it was pretty much an experimental version of Space Invaders. It was pretty bad. The art was pretty bad, but I published it in January 2012. Again, as an experiment, I didn't really expect to make money out of this. I didn't see it as a commercial venture because I was new to this whole app development space. But funnily enough, the second I released it, it became a massive success and went to the top of the charts in a lot of Europe. As you can see there, it's ahead of Minecraft, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that was Alien Ball versus Humans, and it sort of opened me to this whole sort of industry of startups and technology and gaming. And I realized that despite my age, or despite the fact that I was building these games out of my bedroom pretty much, I could reach a huge audience. And I think that's a really important trait that I took a hold of. Another app I did was called My Little World, which was my second major release. I released that in summer 2013. And basically, it was like it was a platformer similar to something like Mario. Again, that was a huge success. I was really lucky that I got to launch it in New York with Apple in one of their stores. But it opened me up to the world of game creation, as in I had a tool in it that allowed kids themselves to make their own games. And this was something that I took on again, promoting coding, promoting programming, and I'll speak about that in a little bit. Okay. Then I was talking about Teachware, which was a pretty interesting direction change. Basically, I was in school one day. It was towards the end of the school year, and my teacher in Ireland had this huge book where she kept like all our information, all our exam scores, all our attendance, behavior, things like that. And what one of my friends did, basically he didn't have the best sort of record in the book. He stole it and disposed of it. Basically, that meant that my teacher had lost all her information from the past year, and that inspired me to create Teachware, which stored all this information but in the cloud on a secure network. It was pretty successful amongst teachers. My friends weren't really impressed by it, as it meant that their information could not be tampered with anymore. But it got 30,000 users, and most of those users were in India, which was pretty interesting, as I'm from Ireland, which is like miles and miles away. And basically, the only issue was India is like 10 and a half hours time difference from Ireland. So when I was supposed to be studying for my exams in school, I wasn't able to keep up with the customer service and demand with Teachware, as in like they were like during their business day when I was trying to sleep. And basically, I had to shut it down due to that. But it was a really interesting project of mine. And then now what I'm working on are two projects which I'm really passionate about, as they concern people, young people, and creativity. So the first one is called Creatively, which is pretty much a version of Instagram for young creative people. So basically, instead of sharing just photos and videos, you can share audio, your coding creations, art, films, things like that. So it's a project that I've been working on for a while. And then what I'm currently working on, which is something I'm really passionate about, is called the Teenage Entrepreneur Movement. So something that, like I said, I'm really passionate about is young entrepreneurship. Like being a teen entrepreneur, coming through as a young person, it's been really difficult. Like there's a lot of disadvantages for starting off so young. One of them is not being taken seriously, but another one is not having access to resources. So I'm lucky in the fact that I'm able to get in touch with my connections. I have contacts in the press, but for other young people just as creative as me and just as smart as me, it can be hard. And what I want to do with the Teenage Entrepreneur Movement is bring a load of resources, a load of connections, and a load of like ideas to pretty much a big network. So basically, kids can go, they can get access to software, they can get access to press, they can meet co-founders, and that's what I want to do with the Teenage Entrepreneur Movement. I also want it to be a global movement. So this would be a good idea for promotion. So if anyone in sort of Colombia or South America would be interested in coming on board as a representative, like for young entrepreneurs, that would be something cool. We currently have a team in Ireland, and we also have a team in Dubai. So like the Teenage Entrepreneur Movement, if anyone is interested or anyone wants to hear more, come and talk to me after this. But yeah, that's what I'm currently working on. I also worked on a project called Kids Code, which allowed young people to learn how to code through visual means, as I really do think that coding and programming is the future. But I'll get onto that in a quick sec. So as well as my projects, I'll quickly run through some other things I do. So I do a lot of ambassador work. I've been really lucky to work with a lot of organizations like Google and Facebook, promoting young entrepreneurship and sharing my story, which has been really fun. I've got to meet some really cool people.